Welcome back to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Keele from Jersey Village PD. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We have a lot of similarities in some of our background, and he has some really cool insights into wellness. So, welcome to the show, Chief Keele. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out.
Of course.
Happy to be
Well,
here.
I'm really looking forward to it. I was hoping you could give a little bit of background because I really related to you. A lot of the things that you said, I was like, oh, I experienced some of those things too. Can you give us a little background into you?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Houston area. Moved off to college. I met my wife in high school. We been married 21 years next week.
Wow.
So it's been an exciting journey. Got two kids, and been a police officer for since 2002, so 23 years now, and it's been an exciting career so far. I've been asked, how many more years are you going to do? You hit that magical 20-year mark, and you're eligible for retirement, and I think 30 is kind of the magical year mark now. But I tell people all the time, I feel like I'm just halfway there. So I enjoy doing what I do every day. I get to wake up, and um, the Lord's blessed me to be able to come out here and serve, and I just it's been a great career so far. Yeah.
When you and I first talked, you said that you love this career. What do you love the most about this career?
It's every day's something different. Every day's a new challenge. Every day's a unique situation. It's kind of like it's like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get. The phrase Forrest Gump, but every day is different. Every day presents a different type of challenge. It gives us an opportunity to problem solve. It You get to see a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. I like to use that adage all the time and tell people that. But at the same time, you get to help people and you get to serve with compassion, and it's a calling, and it truly is something different every day. And that's truly what I love about it the most.
Yeah. And you said that you married your high school sweetheart and you're still together. You're about to celebrate, you said 21 years?
21 years. Yeah. Yeah. Next month. So,
I think that's amazing, especially because we know how the statistics go with marriage in law enforcement and how challenging it is to keep home life healthy and intact. There was a story you told me about a journal. Can you share that with me?
yeah. Yeah. So my son, just started his second year in college. And so when he graduated from high school, my wife and I were just sitting there talking one evening there at the house with him, and we're having a good conversation about just life's journey and the pathways and things like that. And so when we graduated, you had to fill out a journal book, and it's kind of like it was a book that asked you all kinds of different questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What are your goals, memories, and things like that? And so my wife, she's kept every bit of memorabilia. This last week, she was actually she's a school teacher, so she's at home and she's been scrapbooking and whatnot. And so that's who she is she scrapbooks and she keeps track of all that stuff. And she went and grabbed our journals out of the office, and she started reading through it. And she's like, "Oh my goodness, you got to read this." And I said, "What is it?" And so she hands it over to me, and I read it, and it said, "Hey, what do you want to be? Where do you see yourself after high school?" And I said, I'm going to be a police officer. I'm going to do the best job that I can possibly do at it. And so, 23 years later, I'm still in it and loving every bit of it. So,
I love that. What do you think is the secret to creating a healthy home life in this profession?
so when my kids were little, um, that throws all kinds of different challenges, and you become really engaged and engrossed in pretty much all things of their life, whether it's sports, school, all those kind of things. And so that I was coming home from work, and I would leave for work, and working those long hours and working uh, deep night shifts and things like that. Got to a point at some times that I felt that my kids started identifying me as a police officer, and that's who Dad was. Dad's a police officer, And so I said, something's got to change because I want them to know me for dad. I don't want them to know me as my dad's a police officer. And so what I started doing, one thing that I really started doing just to kind of make that disconnection to where it's dad's dad when he's at home was I started getting dressed at work. I went to the locker room there. I didn't wear a uniform to work and I didn't wear a uniform home from work. And so I was able to kind of utilize that as my opportunity to kind of cut that off. And so when I got home, they didn't see that side of me as being in uniform, and that's what I went out to do. And so, um, and just really being engaged in their lives. And marriage is tough. It's especially you meet. I'm a different person than I was when I was 17 years old, um, when my wife and I first met, and so she's. I have to give her credit where credit's due, and we've been asked this question together, and her response is it's pretty much the truest form of it is that we've had to grow and learn each other over the years. And so we're different people at 17. And so it's just always finding that opportunity to like redate each other, be engaged with one another, find out what's important to her, and she vice versa, back and forth with me, and just being a unified unit together. Because you got to have a support system outside of this job, someone that you can be 100% true with, and they understand that, hey, she knows whenever I've had a bad day, probably sometimes before I've had even realized that it was a bad day, and so she's able to tap into those things and just kind of um, change the subject or get on a different topic, or she comes home with a bad day and vents about whatever. It's like, hey, you get 30-45 minutes, let's get it all out in that first little bit of time, and let's move on. Let's enjoy life together, because work's work is going to stay there, and you kind of got to recondition yourself and remind yourself of that. But separating that aspect of being a husband and a father versus being a police officer. And so knowing that there can become an identity crisis is, my husband's a cop, my dad's a cop, no, dad's dad and I'm your husband, and so this is a job, and I love doing it, but at the end of the day, it's a job, and it's a calling, and give it everything that I got, 110% whenever I'm here, but at the same time, go home and give it 110% there as dad and husband. And so,
I love that the tactical, I'm going to get dressed at work and then I'm going to get undressed before I go home. And I have heard this, but never in the context of what you just said. So I have heard this before in the context of being able to leave home at work. No, yeah, leave home at home, leave work at work. And so,
right.
kind of that mental shift and mental framing for you or for the individual, but I've never heard it in the context of family wellness. And so that when you leave, you're still dad or you're still husband or wife or mom. And then when you come home, you're the same. So I think that that's really smart. And I'm hoping that anyone who listens to that, that's a little nugget of something that you can do, not only as a mental framing shift for you, leading into work or coming home, but as, for your family too. I also want to preface this with I am not a relationship expert. I am divorced myself, and I have learned a lot through my successes and my mistakes in relationships. But one thing that I've learned, and this is exactly what you said, you have to be a team. And it's not you against each other, it's you against the world. And I think that as soon as I figured that out, my personal relationship has gotten so much stronger because it's like, it's so easy to get frustrated and to take that out on each other, but how can you become stronger in those moments of adversity? And how can you recognize yourselves as a team? And I say this in quotes that it's you against the world, right? Like it's not you against each other. So I love that you said that you have to be a uniform unit.
Yeah, I mean that's the you have to, you got to have that. We may have different goals in mind at different times and things like that, but we got to find compromise, and sometimes you gotta give and take, and I think that's what is a good balance, there in a relationship. And so it's not been easy. You know, we've had our moments, and we've had our struggles, and but we've had a lot of really good times too. And seeing what we've accomplished now is, it's really been a huge blessing and a benefit seeing our kids now. My daughter's a senior in high school, going to be a senior in high school, and seeing that we're at the end of their journey, and there's times that we're at home alone, and I'm like, well, what's the next chapter hold for us? I have no idea. I think my daughter, she does a lot within her school, and so she's been on a team that she's traveled some this last year, and gone to different competitions in different areas, and so she'd be gone for 2-3 nights at a time. My son's off at college, and so it's just she and I, and my wife and I, and we're sitting there, and it's like, are we cooking dinner? Nope, we're going to eat a bowl of cereal, and it's like it's a whole new chapter, and it's just that kind of, you gotta work through these chapters together, and fine tune it, and work through it. But it's a navigation, but it's a commitment, and
Yeah.
so it's been fun. So
Yeah. Well, and it's what you said earlier, it's a prioritization too. And you had that opportunity to say, hey, I might be I might have an opportunity to do things a little bit better so that I can be there for my family more. And so I think that if you can take a step back and you can understand that we're never going to be perfect, but like how can you prioritize the things that matter the most? And to your point, your family mattered the most. And so how can you, put in the steps to make it so that you guys are as strong as possible? I wanted to ask you, throughout your career, have you ever had a mentor?
there's been a lot of great men and women that have mentored me throughout my career. I've been lucky to and fortunate enough to have had some really good mentors, and I've been fortunate enough to do work in several different areas of law enforcement, gang unit, CID, juvenile unit, investigations. Just done a lot of really different areas over the last 23 years, and each time I've entered it, whether it was a new unit or whether it was the next level of supervision, climbing up through the ranks, there was always someone there that's always, I've gravitated to, and like, hey, I'm going to pick your brain and help me along the way. And sometimes I probably ask more questions than they probably care to answer, but that's the only way you can learn. Is to ask those good questions. But yeah, I've had some really good mentors along the way.
Are there any like specific lessons that you learned that kind of stuck with you throughout your career or impacted you as a leader?
Yeah. So one thing that really comes to mind, Paige, when you ask that question about and how it coincides with the mentorship side of things, is that um, I've kind of learned along the way, and some of these lessons are harder to learn, I think. That even though you're entering different chapters, like I said, I've worked in different units, and in this career, as you move around and you get on different teams and things, whether it's within your platoon on a patrol shift, or your first division within CID or investigations, or a specialized unit somewhere, you become family and you become a team. And then it's kind of like you move to somewhere else, because that's where the next chapter is taking you in your career. And sure, you keep tallies on those people, and you say hi and check in from time to time, but that interconnection sometimes it's not the same, because you're not in their space every day, right? And so when it comes to mentorship, something that I've kind of learned along the way, and something that's been a hard lesson to learn, is I guess it was last year, a little before, almost 2 years ago now. I got a call from a friend of ours that was in one of our units when we were in the gang unit. It was at a different agency that I work for now, and but he reached out and he said, "Hey, one of our partners took his own life," and I was deeply, deeply shocked by that. He was a good friend, a good mentor, and we had kept in contact over the years, even since he moved to another agency. as well. Was really successful, moved up within that agency that he went to work for, um, and rose to the top. And it was a really big shock to hear that he had taken his own life. And probably about 6 months prior to that, he and I had spoken on the phone. I had no clue that anything was wrong, that he was battling anything, fighting anything, And I think as leaders and just as I don't even think it's a leadership thing. I think all ranks within law enforcement are leaders, regardless if you're an officer at patrol level or you're the chief of police. We all own some type of leadership qualities, and it's getting comfortable with asking uncomfortable questions with
Mm.
one another. And so that's how we can truly, really find out how we're doing and how people are doing. If maybe I'd just taken the time to reach out to him a little bit more and, been there as he was for me. And so it's one of those things that, moving forward since that situation, I've got some other mentors that have come along the way now, and I reach out to them, and I try to make it a diligent effort to at least stay in contact and check in on one another. It's kind of like family reunion, like we get together once a year, once every couple of years as a family reunion, and then it's like the, then it, as you become older and some of those things kind of die out. I had a grandmother once tell me, she said, man, we got to start getting together and see each other more often than just at funerals. And that's right. And I think that's everything in life. Life's very short, And so, making that time to reach out to those that, you come in contact and pass along the way it's just critical. I was recently at a seminar and was talking about mental health with officers, and I took a sergeant of ours here, and I took one of the patrol officers, and the three of us went to this retreat, and we listened to a speaker, and he hit the nail on the head whenever he said that. He's like, man, we've got to start being comfortable asking uncomfortable questions. We're quickly to say, hey, let's go grab a beer, let's go grab a burger, let's go drink this off, and not really ever fixing the problem. And we all deal with these demons differently. We see a lot of horrific stuff in this career, and you never know what's going to trigger it. And mental health's a real battle that we face in law enforcement, because at the end of the day, you're there to problem solve, and we're called at 2 o'clock in the morning to solve a problem, to deal with the problem at hand, and deal with that problem and move on to the next one. And earlier on in my career when I first started out, it was kind of like, hey, you better suck it up and move on to the next call. But no, it's a real deal. And so making sure that we're asking one another and checking in and just seeing what those cues are and seeing what those telltale signs are. When my buddy had reached out to me, it could have been he was just waiting for me to ask that question and didn't ask how he was doing. It's like, hey, let's just catch up. And I think that conversation derived around something law enforcement related. Whenever we were in contact with one another 6 months prior, and it wasn't 1 second that I thought to ask him how his kids were doing and his wife was doing or any of that kind of stuff. And so kind of resonated with me. And so I try to make it an effort now to reach out to those that have helped me out along the way outside of where I'm at now, but also those that I'm around now too. And so whether when some of these officers may listen to this podcast, they don't realize it, but there's some young officers that are mentors for me now, even as the chief. Like there's a whole new way of doing things, and listening to them and seeing how they solve problems, it's impressive.
There's a few things I want to say. One, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and sharing that experience. I really appreciated the fact that you said that everyone has leadership qualities. I think that that's really important to recognize. And I think if you can recognize that, it shows that you see the value in everybody. And everyone does have value, right? Regardless if that's within the organization or in your life, every single person has value, and you can learn from every single person, and you can show up and support every single person. And so I really appreciated that you said that. I also thought that that statement that you said from your grandmother was really powerful, and I think that you can put that in the context of law enforcement too, that you have to start getting together and showing up for each other outside of funerals. I think that that is like what a powerful statement to think because you do think that, right? It's like there are so many people who you don't see until there's an incident or something terrible that happened. And this idea of getting comfortable with asking uncomfortable questions, how do you get people to find that comfortability? And what are maybe some of the specific questions that you can ask? Because the one thing that I find really fascinating, and it's not just with you guys in law enforcement, I think it's just in general, like we do such a good job, and I'm sure you guys do such a good job out in the field asking uncomfortable questions all the time, right? You're asking people what happened and, like trying to get to the bottom of things. But then when it comes to asking those same type of uncomfortable questions to people that are in your circle or people who you care about, it isn't as maybe second nature. So, how do you train that?
It's you have to be engaged first of all, and you have to be um, you have to be engaged to the point to where it's you kind of know what normalcy is.
Mm.
Uh, I guess from a law enforcement context of it, you can go out there and you can do. Let's just say that you're going to go do drug interdiction on the highway, and you're looking for abnormal behavior. You're looking for telltale signs of criminal action or someone that does. They immediately go to 10 and 2 as soon as a police officer gets behind them, and they're looking over their shoulder, and those are indicators of possible criminal activity that's going on. And so we're good at doing that then. When we're out there trying to be observant, paid observers to to find criminals, we can do it all day long and we'll pay attention. But we got to pay attention inside our own house too. And when you see someone's body language is not the same, when they come in every single day and they're usually the one that has a big old smile on their face and they're cutting up and they're joking and they're cracking jokes and they're having a good time, right? And so and then you see them, they come in and they look defeated. They don't look the same. It's paying attention to those signs and pulling them aside. Then I've sat in squad meetings as the chief of police here and seen somebody that just seemed off, body language, everything else just looked down about them, and I pulled them aside after the squad meeting, and I said, "Hey man, are you okay? What's going on? Let's talk about this." And within 30 minutes of him and I sitting in there and discussing it, he opened up, explained to me the problem, and we were able to work through and find a solution for that problem in that moment. Because I don't want them going out there on the streets with whatever the problem is, whether it's a home problem that they've got going on, whether it's a internal problem that they've had a strife with one of their supervisors or another coworker. Like, I need you to be out there, be 110% because these are you can have to make a critical decision, and I want that focus to be where it needs to be at in that moment. And so, and I've also told people like, hey, it's okay. You're not in a good place today. Go home.
Yeah.
We'll take care of the shift for you. I've stepped up and I've stayed and worked patrol shifts and gone out there and got in a squad car and answered calls and because you have to stay engaged. You got to be able to see whenever these things are occurring because um, we're setting them up for failure if we're not paying attention. And I think that's one of the things to look for, but also it's relationships. Um, Doing what you say and saying what you do is very important. So if you're going to speak the truth about it and look after them, then you really got to step up and actually do what you're saying you're going to do. Um, and that that takes time. Trust is a hard thing to build up. Cops are very very skeptical sometimes with trust, and trust is just a funny thing in and of itself, and how quickly we'll give it away at times, and then sometimes how hard it is to let it go. And so, but building trust within your organization is critical.
Yeah, well, that was exactly what I thought when before you said trust, the word that I wrote down because you do you always have to back up what you say with action. There's nothing more frustrating to me than someone who talks a big game, but then there's no substance behind it. I call it the cotton candy effect. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but it's like it looks good on the outside. It's pretty, like, it looks like there's a lot there, and then it just dissolves. There's nothing behind it. And
Yeah.
so I agree with you. I think that actions are always going to build trust quicker than words. And
Mhm.
if you are going to say something, then your actions have to match what you're saying. And people are looking at you. I think that, and to your point of that everyone's in a leadership position, people are looking around at everyone, right? Peers are looking at each other and trying to figure out how to respond to certain things or how to act. They're also looking up at you in leadership, executive level, like seeing what you're doing and are your actions and words match. And then they're seeing when there is someone who needs help, what happens? Are they safe and supported, or are they tossed off to the side? So I think that people are looking around to see if you're legit, and I
Mhm.
have to think about that in my life and my career too. Am I being authentic in the messaging that I'm saying, and am I practicing what I'm preaching? Am I talking about the importance of wellness and also living that in my life? Or am I just saying to do something and I'm not also willing to do those things and put that into action? And so I think that it is really important to make sure that there's action behind it because, like you said, it could take years to build trust and it could take a split second to lose it all.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's two things you touched on the page. One was value in people, right? And that everybody does have value. And I've had had to have some hard conversations with um, first line supervisors and things like that in my position. And at first they're like, "Oh, I'm going to get demoted, or this is going to happen, or that's going to happen." I'm like, and I've always sat down and I've told them, like, you have value. Like, you bring a lot of value to the table. You wouldn't be in the position that you're in if it wasn't for how valuable you are. Let's just tap into that value and let's let's get it out of you. Let's find out how we're going to trigger that value and how we're going to get that, because you've got a ton of knowledge, you've got a ton of experience, you've got all these great things that are going for you. You got some good qualities, but it's just this one thing over here that we need to fine tune it. But let's get past that. You think that the world's about to end because we're having a hard conversation, and reminding them of their value. And then trust is the other one, and it is so. I I'll get up sometimes and show up in classes, and I'll when I'm teaching, and I'll talk about trust and how it is such a unique thing, that it's something that we will give away without any thought, and we're the most trusting and all trusting. And so, what I like to tell people is, when was the last time you got on an airplane? You board an airplane and it goes down the runway and the airplane takes off, and you're up in the sky. You've never seen the pilot in there. You have no idea who they are. You don't have any background information about them or anything like that. And you've trusted them with your life to go thousands of feet above the air and go from one city to the next. Or your kids, you take them to kindergarten, and there's no background check on the kindergarten teacher. There's no insight into who the kindergarten teacher is. You meet them for the first time. I'll meet the teacher night 2 weeks prior, and then you drop your kid off, who's your most important person in your life, to somebody you barely met for 30 minutes, and you just give that trust away. Um, but yet it's something that it takes so hard to build up whenever you're making connections with people,
Yeah.
and it's just unique. And trust is a very unique thing, and yes, it's something that takes a long time to build up. It's something that we give away really quickly, depending on what it is that we're doing, and then it's something that can be ripped away so quickly as well too.
Yeah.
So
Well, I really like that you brought it back to the value because here's the thing, if people feel valued, they're going to show up and do a better job for you, but they're also going to show up for themselves because they feel like they have enough value to take care of themselves. And when someone feels like no one cares about me, it affects your self-worth, right? It affects your value. And then you don't want to show up for yourself because you feel like, well, I'm not good enough for them to really value me. And so therefore I must not have value. And so it's this like cyclical thing. It's this downward spiral that tends to happen. And I have experienced that many times in my earlier life, when I was in my darkest times of like, well, if they don't care about me, why should I care about
Mhm.
me? And so I think that if you can, and again, it doesn't have to be from an executive level, although I do think that that's also important, but I think that everyone can show each other that they are valuable. And that's going to build the confidence and self-worth and value that someone sees within them. And my hope is that through that, then it feels like you are worth it to take care of yourself. You know,
Yeah.
you deserve to thrive. And I don't know, I've worked in this space for the last 8 years. I've talked to hundreds of chiefs across the country. I've had so many conversations, and this like makes me emotional. I don't know why I've been like really emotional lately, but I don't know why we have settled for survival. You deserve to thrive, not just survive. Like, yes, we want to survive, of course, but like you deserve more than that. And I think that the more that we can believe it, that we deserve more than that as individuals, then that's going to start to build that culture of wellness and taking care of each other. But I think that we all have to feel like we are worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're always, and I'm sure you've heard this time and time again, we're always putting deposits into the bank. It's making small deposits, small deposits, small deposits, and then sometimes we have to make a withdrawal on that deposit. And we build that trust with our communities that way. We're doing that on a constant basis with building into that tank, but also within the organization too. Is that um, we've got to continuously put those deposits in because at some point you have to make a withdrawal, and it's hard. The withdrawals are a whole lot harder than making those deposits. Um, but it's things like uh, had an officer was anytime I have an officer that's injured on duty, I'm gonna make myself available and I'm gonna go to the hospital. If they're transported to the hospital, I'm gonna make myself, whether it's big or small. If I get a call, they're at the hospital, I'm gonna go and visit them at the hospital. I'm gonna go check on them. I'm gonna do follow up with them. I had an officer that blew his knee out during a foot chase right about the time that I became the chief, and he was like, "Chief, I've never seen anybody come and check on me the way that you did," and it meant the world to me. And followed back up with him even when he was at home and constantly checked on him and things like that. And so, um, but because they are valuable to us, not just as employees, but as people, right? And we spend a lot of time, effort in the background process, the hiring process, the cost associated with the training and all that kind of stuff. And so, um, we want them to stay, right? And so we got to let them know how valuable they are. And I think that a lot of times we have a lot of problems in our profession with. We've had a lot of turnover in this profession. We've had people come and go. We see officers that go from one agency to the next because of whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, it's because they didn't feel valued where they were at,
Yeah.
and some of it's on them. We can't make everybody happy, and there is an accountability piece that coincides there, right? And so, um, but but you got to make sure that they know their value, um, where they're at, and people want to stay because of that. They'll give up pay, they'll give up other things if they feel like they have a purpose and and a value. They're going to stay, and that they trust who they work for and the community that supports them.
I
So
agree that that impacts retention. I also agree that it's a partnership. I wouldn't say a mistake. It was kind of like a funny little thing. I was like, yeah, like you want to make them happy. And I had a chief that was like, well, we can't really guarantee that we're going to make them happy, but maybe like try to make them a little happier, healthier, and so, but I agree, it's a partnership. I know that you really prioritize not just mental wellness, but also physical wellness within your organization. And you have, I'm going to list off a few things that you shared with me that you guys are doing. So I know that you have an open door policy. You really value conversations about wellness. You have workout on duty, you have financial wellness resources that you've brought into the organization, chaplaincy, clinicians that specialize in first responders. And I'm sure that the list goes on, and there's a handful of other things that you guys are doing. And so that was just highlighting a few. But what have you seen as the direct impact of adding things like that to your organization as a part of your wellness support and programming?
I think you have to look at it from a holistic approach because there's so many different things that everybody's got a different way of coping. Everybody's got a different way of and a different challenge that they're facing. And so one, it may be via financial things that are going on. So they need that financial component, that financial piece. And so giving them the financial resources and the education behind, hey, these are some things that you can do. This is a course that you can take, and it's open to you. Or whether it's high blood pressure, working out and you know encouraging them to eat right and things like that. And so when I was a lieutenant here, I was fortunate enough to oversee the a building remodel. We did a building remodel here at the police department, and so um, went through it. And as we were designing and how we were going to change some things up, I, I always admired how um, I had a mentor years ago whenever I was working in investigations. He was a homicide detective, and he told me, he says, "Man, you're going to get more confessions, and you're going to get more confessions out of people whenever you break bread together. You bring a meal into the table for whatever reason. There's a lot of psychological benefit from it, and whenever you're eating with someone, you're more than likely gonna it'll bring out conversations and things like that. And so um, I always remember that. And so if I get called in at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to show up with it may be a Dr. Pepper and a Snickers bar, but I'm gonna at least bring that in as a parting gift to, hey, let's break some bread together. And so we'll do that for the criminal element. And so or when we're trying to get a confession out of someone on that level, but it's like, and I need to embrace that here because I think that fellowship, and that's how these officers can connect and interconnect with one another. So I tell you all that because when I was designing the layout, I said, let's do a break room with an open concept kitchen. And so we were able to incorporate that to our break room. And so there's a full fledged kitchen in there with a stove, microwave, air fryer, refrigerator that they can bring food into. They can cook their meals here. They're here for 12-hour shift, and so um, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning, now they can at least eat something a little bit more nutritious
Yeah,
and heat up a meal, and then they can sit here in an area that they don't feel vulnerable, that their guard has to be up on super high because it's 3 o'clock in the morning and they're sitting in Denny's and waiting for the drunks to show up, and so they can be here, they can relax for a few minutes, get their mind off things. And so that was another thing that we did. And I think that's helped out a lot. I love seeing it when the officers are in there and they're in the break room area together and they're eating together and kind of taking a little bit of time off. And so that's helped out in a lot of different areas, makes them a little bit more connected with one another. Um, but I don't think that there's one single recipe for this mental health wellness. And so some of them love it when the chaplains come out and ride. They've made good connections with them. We're a smaller city and a smaller agency, so utilizing the resources that you have and the volunteers that are out there to kind of help make this thing possible. And so um, I I can't take credit for all of this stuff. A lot of it, our former chief who retired from here, he kind of helped started getting the ball rolling in that, and we've just kind of built upon it over the last 2 years. So
I love it. And It sounds to me like, well, here's the thing that I always believe that it's not a one size fits all. And it sounds to me like that's what your approach is trying to have a lot of different resources so that everyone feels supportive and then trying to think outside of the box as well. Having conversations, checking in on people, having a place for people to eat and just hang out so that they can decompress and come back to their baseline before having to go home or before having to go back out on the streets. And so you're really trying to take that not a checkbox, not a one size fits all approach, and offering lots of different options. I'm curious, what do you think is still the biggest challenge in wellness in general? And what do you think that you guys are still needing, or what is next? Like what is on the horizon for you guys?
I think we've done a good job in this profession over the last uh, 10 years or so about at least finally opening up and talking about this stuff and saying that, hey, it's okay to not be okay, but find a solution to help you. But I think there's still sometimes a little bit of a stigma behind it. I think there's um, I'm supposed to be um, Mr. Macho and tough and be able to handle everything. I'm supposed to go out there and solve other people's problems. Um, Cops do a real good job, I think, in learning how to compartmentalize things. And then let's just move on to the next one. So until something triggers, right? And when that one thing triggers, we just don't know what it is. And so it's giving them options, letting them have at least some type of uh, knowing that, hey, there's options available, and then not being afraid to talk about it. Not being afraid to open up and say, hey guys, like, it's okay. There's not going to be any uh, repercussions because you're not okay. Like, we're
Mhm.
gonna we're gonna get you through this. And so um, the state of Texas has done a really good job with putting a lot of laws in effect, and our city council and has done a really good job with uh, allowing us the opportunity to afford these guys time off and mental health time off and things like that when it's needed and when it's warranted. And so um, I think as I think we're getting better about it, but I think there's still somewhat of a stigma to it. And you've got some guys that have 30, 35 years on the job, and they're like, I ain't dealing with that. I'm not talking to nobody. I'm not dealing with it. Yeah, I've been doing this for 35 years. I don't need any help. I'm going to retire and move on. And it's unfortunate, and but we just got to continuously um, strive to let them know, hey, it's okay to open up. It's okay to nobody's going to hold you accountable because you're not okay because you're dealing with something. We're all human.
It's so funny because I used to have that same mentality of like, I'm good. I don't need anything. Like I'm tough, I'm strong. And I think you forget how bad you feel when you don't know what it feels like to feel good. We're extremely adaptable as humans. And so now looking back, I think I, in order for me to try to feel like I had more control, I had to have that mentality of like, I'm going to shove it down, I'm going to posture up, I'm good, I'm not going to talk about it. But I honestly was never more out of control. I didn't have control over my coping mechanisms. I let those things control me. So I was always trying to escape and numb and do all the things that I had to do to not have to deal with it. And
Mhm.
I truly believe that the strength is in having control over your actions, reactions, over everything that has control over you. And the only way to do that is to deal with it. The only way out is through. And I think that we try so hard to like skirt around and to take the roundabout way of things when it comes to
Mhm.
wellness. And really, the only way you can do it is if you attack it head on and you go straight through. It's almost like, have you heard the thing about the tornado? And like when you try to run away from the tornado, how it hits you harder than if you were
Yeah.
to run into the tornado. And so I think that through conversations like this, through action, through building a supportive environment, I think that that script will be flipped a bit more, and there'll be more of an
Mhm.
understanding that the strength is being able to deal with the stuff and to find freedom from those things. Like that's the strength, because that's the really hard work. It's harder to run at your problems than it is to run away from your problems, but we all know what happens when you run away from your problems and how it ends up biting you in the end. And so, my hope is that through conversations like these, then people will start to understand that the strength is in the courage to deal with it.
Mhm. And just reminding them, hey, man, you're not alone in this fight. You're not alone in this. I promise you're not the first police officer that's dealt with post traumatic stuff, or you're not the first police officer that's going through divorce. You're not the first police officer that has financial problems or has problems with your kids. You know, uh, there's only one perfect person that's ever touched down on this earth, and that's Jesus Christ Himself. And we're none of us are anywhere nearly the same as Him. And so just be reminded of that and stay grounded about it. And I think that I'm real big in putting my faith there, and um, it's helped me get through a lot of it. And so I've dealt with a lot of things in my own personal life. Lost a brother really young in life. I lost my mother. My grandparents are no longer here, and so everybody that's my close immediate family, I've lost them all. And so keep my faith in the hope there, and knowing what's to come. And so, but I think that you doing this with the Chiefs across the nation, and them opening up and saying, hey, all kind of speaking the same message. I think it's one way to get the message across that, like, hey, as Chiefs and as leaders across this profession, that we're on an understanding that, hey, it's okay to not be okay, and we're going to get you there, um, because we're all in this fight together, and all of you have value, and um, we need you. We can't do this alone. The communities you serve need you, and they're relying on you. And so,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm gonna quote you because I don't want to miss saying this because I thought that this was so true. You had said this when we first had our initial conversation. You said the most valuable tool is between your ears. And so I think that if we can remember that like in order for you to be able to show up and do the best job, for your agency, for your community, in order for you to be the best version of yourself for your family, you got to be mentally well. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on your thoughts of that. But when you said that, I was like, yeah, like we gotta take care of ourselves mentally because I do agree. I do think it's the most valuable tool.
yeah, absolutely. We'll send you to all the de-escalation trainings. We'll train you in firearms. We'll train you in pursuit driving. We'll train you in all these things. We'll buy you all the equipment that you need, the life-saving equipment you need, ballistic shields, bulletproof vest, body armor, all these things. And so all those it's a tool to get you there to solve the problem. And the only way to solve that problem that you're going to is that one muscle in between your two ears, and that's your brain. And so if you're not fully focused and fully aware when you get there, it all of this does no good. This is just, you're a tool that the community needs to solve the problem, as a problem solver. But you can't solve it if you can't think. And when you're not fully there mentally, and your head somewhere else, it's you're not doing anybody good. And so um, that's just kind of one of the ways that I look at it. Is that your mental health has to be there.
I agree. My last question for you, and you've already given so much really good words of wisdom and advice, but what words of wisdom would you share with the younger generation, or maybe someone who's earlier in their career, something that maybe you wish you would have known earlier, or something that's helped you along the way?
Yeah, every day you go out there, it's an opportunity, and you have an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life, um, or you have an opportunity to put a band-aid on the problem and move on and not really resolve it. Um, I've missed out on a lot of opportunities in my career, um, where I probably could have made more of a difference than I did. But the most memorable ones are the ones where I actually took the time to have compassion, have resolve, and look at it from a totally different lens. And those are the lives that I hope to know that I maybe changed or changed in that moment. But every day that you go out there and you put this uniform on and you get to serve the public, it serves as an opportunity. And so you have a choice to make of how you're going to respond to that opportunity and how you're going to deal with it. And so, um, that's my advice is don't miss the same opportunities that I've missed, because I wish I could get them back in some areas.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Keele.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for coming on here and sharing your invaluable words of wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Of
So
course. And
enjoyed it.
thank you to everyone who's listening, and we'll see you again next time.